Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
It is an historic day in Canada and Canadian politics. After 9 years in power, Justin Trudeau, Canada's 23rd Prime Minister, is calling it a career.
Last night over dinner, I told my kids about the decision that I'm sharing with you today. I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process.
Trudeau's leadership has been on a rocky road since the 2021 federal election, where his party secured only a minority government. And in the past 12 months, the Liberal Party has seen their public support sink to lows not seen in its 150-year history. The Liberals, known as Canada's natural governing party, now seem poised for near annihilation in the next federal election. Trudeau's resignation brings with it more questions than answers. He will stay on as party leader and Prime Minister until the Liberals have chosen a new leader, and it remains unclear when exactly that will be. But one thing we do know for certain, Justin Trudeau is now in his final months as Canada's Prime Minister. I'm David Smith, and this is The Big Story. Cormac MacSweeney is Parliament Hill Bureau Chief for NewsRadio and City News. He joins me now. Hi, Cormac.
Hello.
So, questions, and not a lot of answers. Let's start at the beginning. Justin Trudeau's announcement this morning had a couple parts to it. What do people need to know?
Well, the Prime Minister says that he took the time over the holiday break to reflect on his future and decided that he was going to step away. This comes after months and months of internal pressure from his own team, from his own Liberal MPs, to step away from politics and give the party a better shot in the next election. He said he reflected. He told his kids last night over dinner that he was deciding to step away. He said the country deserves a real choice in the next election, and it became clear to him that if he was having to fight internal battles, that he can't be the best option in that election. So his focus around his resignation speech was mainly about the internal battles that they were having at the Liberal Party. Didn't really talk or address some of the reasons for those internal battles, and that's been the poor polling numbers that have been in place for more than a year, up to 2 years now, where the Liberals have just struggled and have not been able to rebound no matter what they did, and that sort of led to the frustrations from MPs that led to this internal revolt. But nonetheless, that's part of the reason why the Prime Minister said that he was going to be stepping away. Another angle to all of this is that he's proroguing Parliament. He's going to put things on pause in terms of the parliamentary session. We were supposed to see MPs arrive back at the House of Commons late this month. The Conservatives were already angling for a non-confidence vote to happen as soon as January 30th. That's now going to be put off because Parliament is prorogued until March 24th. In that time, there's going to be a leadership race, but the earliest that the government could be taken down by the opposition would roughly be a couple of days after March 24th, so March 26th, when a new throne speech comes out, and whoever the new leader is sets out their vision, and then the opposition parties get to vote on that vision, and all of them have sort of said that they don't believe the Liberals are the right choice anymore, regardless of who's leading, so it looks like we could be heading to a spring election.
Right, and what does that mean for the exact timing of that federal election? There is a fixed date in October. It now looks unlikely, if not impossible, the government will actually survive until then. So if they lose that confidence vote in late March, when would that put the election date approximately?
Yeah, so let's just clarify as well for listeners that the fixed election date law isn't really binding. It's there to try and give some planning and some stability in when people can expect elections, but it's still at the choice of the Prime Minister going to the Governor General or being toppled by opposition parties in a minority parliament situation, which is what we're in now. And so because of that, the government could fall at any time. There are a couple of scenarios that could happen. I mean, whoever the new leader is could say, I don't even want to go back to the House with a throne speech. I want to go to the GG right away and ask for an election. So, I mean, that's a possibility, probably an unlikely possibility, but that's one of the many possibilities that could be out there. But if we do see the government fall in that first week back with a new throne speech from the government and a new leader in place, that should put an election day somewhere around maybe May 5th or May 12th. Generally, election days in Canada are held on Mondays. And so those would be the two closest days to that 36-day mark in which you would have to have a minimum for a federal election campaign. There's been a lot of speculation that whoever the new leader is will want to try and head to the polls quickly, even though that might not be their choice given what the opposition is saying. And the reason for that is that they could potentially get what's called a honeymoon, a bump in the polls with a new leader. All of the attention over the next couple of months will be on who the Liberals will choose as their next leader. That can help with a lot of name recognition, make people feel maybe a little bit better if they've been soured against the Liberals and used to support the Liberals in the past. And so they may want to head to the polls right away and capitalize on whatever honeymoon they have and not lengthen it out a few months and potentially, face controversies or other issues as a result of all of that. Either way, whoever the leader is going to be heading into the next election, you can be sure the opposition parties are going to try and paint them with the Trudeau brush to try and take the Liberals out of power.
Yeah. And the timing of the election, a lot of the unknowns there rest on when the Liberal Party leadership decision will be made. And there were a couple options at the Prime Minister's disposal, at the Liberal Party's disposal, ahead of Trudeau's resignation. One of them would have been to have the caucus simply choose a new leader for the party without having a one-person, one-vote, party-wide leadership nomination race across the country. But Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party have opted not to go with that route. They will be doing a national leadership convention. So how exactly does that play out? What do we know about how that's going to work?
Well, we don't know everything about it. There are some timeframes in the Liberal Constitution, such as certain days, such as it has to be more than 27 days long, things like that. But there is also a lot of leeway for the National Board to try and expedite a process. But nonetheless, I think we have to wait and see what the rules are going to be, because the National Board is going to be meeting this week to try and determine timelines and set rules for this leadership race. So I think some potential candidates may announce even before those rules are set to try and get their foot in early and try and start drumming up support as quickly as they can. Others may wait to see what the rules are, because there will be an entrance fee. That might be significant this time around to try and whittle down the list so it's not going to be, a very wide field. But you do have a lot of people who are potentially interested in that position. And so we've been talking for a long time about a lot of names, such as Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, or I should say former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, current Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc, former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney, Transport Minister Anita Anand, Innovation Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne, Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly, even BC Premier Christy Clark could be interested in this position. So you have a lot of people with some name recognition who are looking into this. And the rules will be very interesting to see, because if there's a very high entrance fee, it might keep some people out of the race. If there are certain goalposts that have to be hit, such as members signed up and things like that. So we'll have to wait and see how the National Board structures this race, because it could determine how many people we get in there, and who decides to see it through right to the end. But also, there could be some random people that nobody has been talking about or expecting who might decide to jump in as well. So we'll wait and see what those rules are, but it can really matter a lot in a leadership race.
I think it's worth stating again, just to remind the listeners, Justin Trudeau is still the Prime Minister. Canada is not without a Prime Minister. He will continue to be the PM until that leadership race is over. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. The Prime Minister is staying on until his replacement is in place, and the Prime Minister remains the Prime Minister until a new Prime Minister is sworn in by the Governor General. Even in election times, I think people don't realize this sometimes, that in an election period, we often refer to them as Liberal leader, Conservative leader, New Democrat leader, things like that. That's to make sure that we have fair coverage over all three leaders, even though whoever the incumbent is still technically the prime minister until the day that a new prime minister is sworn in. So this prime minister has not quit today. He is only going to officially quit and leave that position once his replacement is in place.
And that will be, I think it's fair to say, at the latest, that's going to be when Parliament returns in near the end of March, right?
I think it'll be earlier than March 24th, because March 24th is when Parliament returns. So they're going to have some time to prepare a throne speech, lay out their vision, what they want, to present it to Canadians. If they're going to fall on that throne speech, they're going to want to do a little bit of work on that throne speech to make sure that it is campaign ready, because that's the vision they're going to be bringing into a campaign. And as well, I think they need a little bit of time to possibly choose a new cabinet. They may shuffle cabinet with a new leader in place, pick some people who they feel may be that they want to have in their inner circle in the lead up to whatever happens after Parliament returns. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out, but they'll need a little bit of time. So at least a couple of weeks, maybe a little bit more. It could be early March when we actually have a leader in place, so that there's a little bit of time for them to try and get their affairs in order before they're potentially taken down in a confidence vote.
So, status quo for the time being, but Justin Trudeau will be resigning. There will be a new leader of the Liberal Party, and there will almost certainly be a spring election for Canadians. Now, you, Cormac, have been covering Mr. Trudeau since he was first chosen as Liberal leader before his first election victory, where he became the Prime Minister in 2015. I'd love to ask you, if you had to pick a couple moments or policies that will stand out as part of Justin Trudeau's political legacy, what would they be?
You know, I've heard people who have said, like, oh, nothing's been done during his time in power. And you know what? Like, I don't think that that's true. A lot of stuff has happened, but people may not like it, and people may like it. So it all depends on your perspective of whether these things are good or bad. And that's fair. That's politics. That's Canada. That's a democracy. But there are several things that we can point to that the Prime Minister will be remembered for. Some of them may be questioned about whether they last through another government, such as the Conservatives, if they're able to take power in the next general election. But if I had to narrow it down, I mean, just, you know, the first thing would be his leadership. At the time, the Liberal Party was in tatters. They had lost a couple of elections. The NDP had formed the official opposition. And there was a lot of talk in that 2015 campaign that the NDP could form government, or could just obliterate the Liberal Party as we knew it before that point. He saved the Liberal Party from oblivion, if you will. And he was able to use that campaign, flank the NDP on the left, and save the Liberal Party. And for the first time in history, was the first party to go from third place to government in one single election. Right away, he was dealt with the medical assistance in dying. The courts had ruled on it. The Harper government chose not to deal with it right away. And so it got left till after the election, and he had to deal with that whether he wanted to or not. Legalization of marijuana happened under Trudeau. There was a banning of assault-style firearms and handguns that they pushed through. I think every Canadian will remember him as the Prime Minister during COVID, stick handling the pandemic. Of course, that leads as well to his use of the Emergencies Act amid the convoy protest, and that will be a moment, not necessarily a policy, well, also a policy, but a policy choice in a moment that I think many people will remember him for. But those around him and close advisors to him, and even the Prime Minister himself kind of alluded to it, that he believes it's the family issues and the issues of the middle class that will will be a lasting legacy for him, such as increasing the Canada Child Benefit, lifting a lot of kids out of poverty, implementing the National Child Care Plan, the $10 a day child care plan, as well as the dental care plan for those without coverage. Now, the NDP argues a lot of those things they had been pushing for well in advance, but just like healthcare, the NDP had been pushing for it, but it was a Liberal government that kind of pushed these policies through. We'll have to wait and see if some of these policies survive multiple governments and become entrenched as policies that stick around for generations to come. But only time will tell with those.
The end of an era in Canadian politics after 9 years, really an historic day and a momentous occasion for all Canadians, and especially those of us who watch these things closely. Cormac MacSweeney, thank you so much for your time today on such a busy day. Really appreciate it.
Anytime, David.
Again, that is Cormac MacSweeney. He is the City News and NewsRadio Parliament Hill Bureau Chief, joining me from Parliament Hill today. That was The Big Story. Thank you so much for joining us. You can send us feedback on this episode or any other episode. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca or leave a voicemail at 416-935-5935. You can find the show on the Seeker app or on all your favorite podcast players. Please rate, review, follow, and share. I'm David Smith. Thank you for listening.